Welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast, a show about innovations, technology, and leaders in the recruitment industry. Brought to you by TalkPush, the leading recruitment automation platform.
Hello, and welcome back to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast. I'm your host, Max Armbruster, and today on the show, somebody south of where I am, all the way down in in Sydney, Mrs. Kelly Van Nelson, Managing Director at Adecco Australia. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you, Max. It's great to be here today.
Pleasure to have you. And Kelly, how do you end up as a managing director? I'm not going to ask you to introduce Adecco, because if you don't know Adecco, you're on the wrong podcast, because you should. As number one brand in the world. And I'm sure it's got different strength in different markets. It's pretty well known worldwide. I couldn't think of a geography where it isn't. So I assume that the business in Australia is also quite wide ranging, from tech to more office temporary staff and everything in between.
Yes, it is. We have the Adecco group and all of the brands represented in Australia, which Adecco is workforce solutions, but we do have our tech solutions and we do have talent solutions, which is our placements and upskilling and reskilling too. So yeah, the full complement of the Adecco group is here on the ground in and around Australia.
Australia is in the news right now for all kinds of reasons, mainly because it's impossible to come in and out of it. Has that been? We'll talk later about how that's affected your team, but from the business standpoint, has it been good or bad for business?
I would say it's been good for business. Challenging, absolutely, and we have had to very rapidly pivot our operations and elements of the business to leverage the opportunities, but nevertheless, it's actually been good for our business for a number of reasons. And we can dive into them if you like, but I would say definitely positive impact.
That's great to hear. I've recently had on the show someone who's talked to me about having to repurpose half of her team to do something other than recruitment in 2020. And I hope it wasn't too traumatic for the team down under. And it sounds like things are good. So we'll find out what you can share with us there. But before we go there, if you could share with me and the audience how you ended up where you are today, because you don't sound Australian. So I think it must have been a long road.
It's been a long road, 27 years in the recruitment and workforce solutions space and technology industry. Started out in Northern England, as you can probably guess from the accent. But moved around the world in the industry, lived in South Africa, Edinburgh, London, and many years in Perth in Western Australia in my early years of my career with the Adecco group in the technology brand, which is Modus. And 2.5 years ago, I moved to Sydney with the family and moved into the managing director role of Adecco. So been around a little while and seen the hugely changing industry that we work in, which is actually exciting. No 2 days are ever the same.
It attracts a good bunch of people who end up in recruitment, people who are empathetic and hardworking generally. But empathetic and hardworking may not be enough anymore. There are new skills required to survive in this dogfight. Can you elaborate on how those changes have affected the composition of your team, and what are the people that have done well and those who have lagged behind?
Yeah, we definitely see a demand, not just in our own business, but with our customer base for a different set of core skill sets. Resilience is the one we're always seeking. And with that comes the ability to adapt and change and embrace change. And the resilience piece, not just from COVID, but from the changing sort of industry that we work in and the rapid scaling of technology and the different demands of, the global economy. So for me, resilience is the number one thing I look for when we are interviewing for new personnel to build a high-performing team. And when we have people in the business, the most successful recruiters and broader team members that I see who really have a good long career and good long tenure and great success would be the ones who have this aptitude for lifelong learning, always looking to gain new skills, always looking at what's next, not what's happening today, and being very, very open to self-investment in their own skill set and personal capability and in achieving personal best. So I would say having a huge aptitude for upskilling, reskilling, and lifelong learning is really critical right now.
And to be able to assess resiliency in the course of a couple of interviews sounds like mission impossible. I can't even think of psychometric or a competence assessment test that would get you there either. Intuition, career history. What are some of the good data points you can base those decisions on?
Yeah, definitely. I probe a lot around scenarios, even with people that we're interviewing who don't come from the industry or don't bring a huge amount of experience, or they might be a graduate, for instance, entering early career. I tend to put some scenarios on the table around what has been a challenging circumstance that you've faced and how have you overcome an obstacle. And, just different types of people like to self-manage. And just really probe around those examples, and you can tend to, to find what you're looking for in individuals who have risen above obstacles and removed roadblocks. So it's definitely something I spend quite a lot of time on during an interview process, probing on that one.
Yeah.
I think the recruitment industry as a whole now is asking for this whole broad range of soft skills. If you looked before, what would be the core skills of recruiters? It would be probing on ability to meet targets and ability to sell and, customer skills on the telephone and all of the things that go with sort of a sales skill set or, maybe a call center skill set. Whereas now it's really about these inner skills that, can really set you apart when the going gets tough.
Yeah, it's about this lifelong learning, reinventing yourself a few times. And I think I wouldn't do very well in an interview like that. I've had my fair share of, conflicts and difficulties, but the human brain, I just kind of raised it all. I don't even, when the challenge has been overcome, I kind of tend to forget about it and pretend it never happened. But that's maybe why I wouldn't be such a good recruiter. Maybe that's a unique skill set for an entrepreneur.
You'd be surprised. We could make a recruiter of you yet. I think we can make good recruiters of most people. Yeah.
Thank you. That is a fine compliment. Great. So one change that recruiters and white collar workers all over the world have had to take in is this hybrid work environment.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many people you manage in Australia and how big the team is, but I'm sure you've had some turnover with people who are either fed up with working from home or fed up with going to the office, one way or the other. It's very hard to please everybody. How have you worked around these challenges?
I think for us, it's just again about being adaptable. We were very lucky in that when the first wave of the pandemic really took foothold in Australia, we were very well positioned to rapidly move to work from home. We ran an overnight test and pretty much within 24 hours, we had moved our entire operations to virtual working. And that was right across the country, which was quite extraordinary. And that really enabled us to push on and do what was needed to be done with redeploying workers and helping the workforce to cope with the pandemic, as in many workers coming out of employment or being stood down or having their hours cut back and needing to be handheld into new industries or new positions. And many candidates also needed assistance to use virtual tools, virtual interview tools, virtual application tools, onboarding tools. But our own recruiters inside Adecco were very, very able to adopt literally within 24 hours. We had already been really pretty good at allowing and supporting flexible working policies and embracing work from anywhere and mobility and things for quite a long time, which really bode us well in what happened with the first wave of COVID. As we've progressed through sort of the last, more than a year now of the pandemic, what we found is we've got this interesting trend where about half the workforce wants to be in the office half of the time. So you've got this hybrid scenario emerging, and the next normal continues to be this hybrid environment. Workers want to have a balance of time in the office where they can interact, they can upskill, they can learn from one another, they can find this team camaraderie face to face and have human interaction and social interaction in the workplace versus being highly productive, if not more productive from home. and, being able to balance their home lives and, being able to balance the safety and environment which we have to work in if we're going through different lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So we see this globally. On average, globally, 53% of workers want to spend at least, some of their time working remotely. So it's not really a trend anymore. It's actually the new norm, this hybrid working. So organizations are having to adopt to this in different ways, depending on the industry and the type of business you run. But for Adecco, we're very much in a comfortable place now with being able to operate both from office and from home in varying levels of that, and giving people flexibility.
That's to be expected. Progressive employers such as Adecco would have already spent a lot of time doing hybrid workplace. Maybe you have some customers who are more traditional, let's say, more resistant. The customer is king to a certain degree. So have you kind of helped customers attract, change their recruitment marketing to attract workers that are more inclined towards the office? And then, of course, we know there's plenty of offer for jobs that are fully remote. I think that the labor market is plentiful, but are you working with some employers that are still committed to having a purely office environment?
We definitely see that. We see some businesses still struggling to find their feet a little bit with what the business landscape looks like. And we also have a very large proportion of our workforce, especially in the contingent labour space, that are essential work. And that doesn't necessarily always allow work from home for various reasons, if there is, customer face-to-face engagement or services needed. What we tend to do is typically treat each business with, good listening and good understanding of what their business objectives are, and also have a good conversation around the skill shortages that we do face. And, we've no migration, more than 70,000 people normally migrate into the country and fill a lot of the positions that we look for. And that workforce is not readily available anymore. Unemployment's at an all-time low, and the talent pool is to a certain extent shrinking. So accessibility to talent and the best talent in the market is key for any business, whether it's a very small business right up to, a large global Fortune 500. Giving your organization the chance to hire the best talent wherever they're located and bring them into your business, it really allows for diversity of your workforce and to really attract and retain right now at a time that's critical. If you don't, you will be to a certain extent left behind. So sometimes it's a conversation around, talent shortages and getting the best talent. There's a financial link to that and a financial benefit to that. There are productivity gains that are proven to be really good if you can get this blend right. And workers and employees are commanding it right now.
Yeah, and in this market, I'm surprised anybody can hit their targets. What are some of the creative workarounds for industries where you have low unemployment, rising wages, more constraints about who can come in and who cannot? Can you illustrate some creative thinking that's gone on where maybe you've reconverted people from one industry to the next in order to keep the wheels spinning?
Yeah, we definitely had exactly this scenario. So if I can go back a year, we had whole industries that were downsizing, and substantially so. For example, aviation and hospitality and retail to a certain extent, and sports and recreation. Entire industries pretty much grounded. And in parallel with that, you had many other industries experiencing extraordinary surges. So, for example, online trading of services, whether it be online buying and retail, consumer services over the phone or online, for example, call centers and contact centers, the demand for skills second to none during COVID, coupled with healthcare changes and certain industries there. So you had this two-stream scenario of industries downsizing their workforce substantially and industries commanding extraordinary numbers of new jobs in different industries. So we did a lot of work very, very quickly. I'm talking in a matter of 1 to 2 weeks, putting workers through very rapid upskilling and reskilling practical courses that were going to give them the tips and the techniques and the basic skills to be able to transition from one industry into another with some level of seamless, ease. And that was enormously successful. We transitioned and redeployed a couple of thousand workers in a fortnight in the early stages of COVID by upskilling and reskilling in these short, sharp programs and ways of working. So that was highly successful. And a lot of that has remained. So we are still today as an organization in Adecco investing in upskilling and reskilling through our different brands, really working with candidates to best identify how we can use candidate pools smartly and sensibly to fill the skills gaps, even if their skills are not the perfect fit, because in the large part, they're not the perfect fit. The skills of the future and the jobs of the future are different, and they're changing every day quite rapidly. So with that means skills of job seekers also have to change and evolve. And our job as a recruitment firm needs to embrace that and help bridge those gaps and provide a transition from one job into another, or from one industry into another. That will remain, and we have a big part to play as a recruitment industry to enable job seekers to find comfort and not be afraid of the future.
Yeah, your inspiring story about how Adecco responded quickly to these changes makes me think, you're a little bit like a financial trading company where some hedge funds really benefit from market instability. They're like, when things are moving quickly, that's when they make money. You could think that, of course, it'd be very, I don't want to lay the cynical vision of Adecco as a profiteer of traumatic situations, but rather as an agent of change, where the market will continue to change. Most people will continue to look for jobs, good year, bad year, traumatic year. This change needs guidance. And so you could imagine that Adecco would have, I haven't looked at your results are publicly posted, but it sounds like Adecco may have had a great year when you put it that way.
We definitely did have a good year, I think, and ultimately we have shareholders and we're publicly listed and you have a business to run. But the reality of it is, if we had last year have faced the wave of the first lockdown, sort of sat back to a certain extent and accepted a good proportion of our workforce was being stood down or were having their hours reduced through absolutely no fault of our clients. We supply a huge number of small and medium enterprises, not just large organizations, and many sectors that were impacted. We would have been in serious trouble. We would have been in serious financial trouble. We would have had our own workforce impacted with not enough work to do. And it's not in our nature to sort of accept that. So we're very, very quick to look at the strategy and to pivot and to understand where the market was going short term and where the market was going to go long term. And that was incredibly difficult during COVID. But our workforce inside Adecco absolutely adapted, and we moved people around internally from one team to another team internally. And people responded very well to that and got on with the necessary task of trying to help as many people as possible remain in work or come out of work in one job and get into work in another. And that helped us to remain sustainable as a business, helped our workforce and our candidates, and ultimately helped our clients, even the ones that were downsizing. That helped them because they knew their workers were going to another home. And it was easier on everyone to do that. So it was actually really quite rewarding, despite the pressure and the challenges of the economy and the market and the health crisis that everybody was facing. So yeah, we're a pretty resilient bunch in the large parts in Adecco. But yeah, there's business drivers for sure that go with that. We didn't want our own workforce to have to be impacted, but we didn't want our candidates and casual workforce to be impacted either. And I think we did a really good job of leading the charge there.
Well done to the team. And I hope, of course, that not every year is as full of changes as last one, and that we can have some more quiet times where people can settle into their industry and gain some sense of stability. I have two more questions for you. One of them is about productivity and tech tools that are used by the team or that you use personally that you would recommend. What are some productivity tips you can offer to our listeners?
Yeah, I love this question. And I come from a technology background, so I am always keen to try and look at what tools are out in the market and technology in the market that will give us efficiencies and give us advantage as well, differentiators for us and our clients. If I look at some of the tools we've embraced and scaled, we are right now today we're embracing AI, and we're embracing analytics, and the data that we have is, and the power that sits within that data. Also embracing chatbots and finding ways to automate elements of the recruitment process that for many years have been manual or very labor intense or very cumbersome, and is often low return on investment tasks. So finding good ways to automate the recruitment process has been a real journey for Adecco, and we are still advancing every day with what we're doing with our technology and tools. And that's exciting. It's exciting because it doesn't displace our recruiters if we automate an element of their task and their business process. It actually enables them to focus on new work, on where the market's going, what their customers really need, and their relationship building, and focusing on different maturity of our solutions and what we're actually offering. So what we found is, as we've brought in more tools to automate the process, the capability levels of our recruiters has improved. And we've got, much higher grade recruiters. I always say we have a high performing team, and that's absolutely true. And we are enabling them to be that by taking away the low hanging fruit from them through use of tools and technologies. So they embrace it. Our recruiters are not afraid of the tech. They actually will snap both my hands off if I'm bringing something new to the table, which is a product that's going to help them in their day to be faster, quicker, speed to market, offering better service to their clients, helping their candidates apply and remain on our workforce, for a longer period of time. So it's exciting. We're using many, many tools in a really great way, and they're here to stay. Technology is a key enabler now of the workplace, isn't it? It's here to stay.
They're lucky to have a leader that can embrace it so vividly, because, I started my company after doing a lot of recruitment myself, interviewing thousands of people over the phone, and feeling the dehumanization, feeling my soul slipping away. To know that these days are for the most part gone, that now it's much more value-added work. It's a redefinition of the role of recruiters that's happened over the last 15 years, which is absolutely wonderful. Now, my last question is about one of my favorite questions, which is, we all make hiring mistakes, and we try, as I said, to bury those memories, but sometimes it's good to wait a minute and remember, so we can draw the lessons from them. Can you walk us back through a specific hiring mistake you've made, and why you made that mistake, and what we can learn from it?
Yeah, great. This is a good question, and I've never had this question before in my many interviews, so it's a nice first one. Maybe what I would say on this one is that if I go back, I've been around nearly 3 decades now, 27 years in recruitment, and one of the things we often used to do as leaders is hire multiple recruiters into the business, and potentially at an average level, on the hope that a good proportion would step up and a good proportion would remain average, and you might have 1 or 2 stragglers that would not necessarily be the right fit, and you would make that call and you would mass hire, especially in the large recruitment firms. And that works to a certain extent, but it's not really great for the individuals, and it's not the most rewarding way to, build a high performing culture and workforce. So we definitely don't do that now. What we do now is just hold the line and very carefully wait for the right fit, the right cultural fit, never compromising culture or values or ethics, waiting for the right fit, even if it means we have an open vacancy for quite a long time and we're losing productivity as a result of that, because it pays off more. We've been hiring that way for the last 2-3 years, and everything has improved as a result. I would say our culture is better, our productivity per recruiter is better, the camaraderie has improved, and the level of business that we're selling is far better. And it's because we make much more cautious hires. We just, I'd rather sit with an open role than to fill with 3 or 4 people and know one of them might not make it. I'm not a lover of that model. I don't think it's good leadership practice, and it just doesn't serve you well in the long term. So I hold the line now. I would rather hire well and take time and be cautious about it and know that we are really getting that good fit than, mass hire and hope.
Hold the line. Don't lower your standards. You can always look back and say, oh, well, I did this because of that mistake. But in your heart of hearts, you know when you're making a hiring mistake, when you're dropping the bar. So it's important to just accept the fact that your business is going to be stretched. And like you said, Kelly, sometimes at the risk of hurting productivity, but it's a small price to pay for a long-term gain. So thanks a lot, Kelly, for that advice and for your time. And well, I hope we'll get some of your followers to listen to our podcast.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you today.
That was Kelly Van Nelson, Managing Director at Adecco Australia, which tells us resilience, whether at the company level or the individual level, is one of the most valuable skills you can have in recruitment, because things change fast and recruiters are change agents. They help whole economies reinvent themselves. I hope you enjoyed this interview and that you'll be back for more. Please remember to like, follow, and share.